Well, hey guys, it's Darwin, and today I want to talk about some super popular backpacking gear that I would personally never buy or use. Over the years, I've talked a ton about backpacking gear that I have, but I would never take on something like a thru hike. Today, I want to specifically talk about gear that I see a lot of other people use that's really popular that I would just never spend my money on and I would never want to use on the trail. I guess some gear hot takes, if you will. And remember, before we jump into the video, all gear is subjective. This is just my opinion, and honestly, I'm just having a little bit of fun. I'm sure there's tons of gear that you guys have seen me use over the years that you would never ever buy or use out on the trail. All right, so the first piece of gear that I would never buy, that I would never use on trail, are Crocs, or basically any camp shoe. The only time I've ever had camp shoes in my 9 years and 14,000 miles of long distance hiking and backpacking is when I went to go do the Appalachian Trail. I had something that was similar to a Croc, not quite a Croc, called a Vivo barefoot shoe. My wife had Crocs, and I see a ton of people use Crocs. They're big, they're clunky, they're heavy, and honestly, after using them on the AT, I've never felt like I needed an extra pair of shoes when I got into camp. I just take my socks off that I've been wearing all day, and I slip my regular shoes back on, walk around camp until I'm ready to go to bed. So some people will say that they use them when they cross rivers and streams, but I think it's actually super dangerous to wear a shoe like that when you're crossing a stream because you can slip on a rock and fall because they don't have any grip. They're not good for that. It's much safer if you just cross in your regular shoes and get them wet. Crocs have always been one that I think is just super funny. They're super overkill, and I would personally never buy them or add them to my backpacking kit. The second piece of gear that I would never spend my money on is one that's probably gonna ruffle some feathers, and that is a Melanzana fleece hoodie. I'm sure backpackers and thru hikers' souls all around the world just died a little bit right now. So if you don't know what a Melanzana fleece hoodie is, they've become super popular probably over the last 5 or 6 years. They are a microgrid fleece hoodie that are made up in Leadville, Colorado. You can usually point them out because they have a big kangaroo pocket. It has a little shock cord right here and a big hood. Now, I have been to Leadville multiple times. I have some friends that live in Leadville that I've visited. I stopped through Leadville on my Colorado Trail thru hike, and I also stopped through there on my Continental Divide Trail thru hike. So I have tried these fleeces on. I've checked them out, and honestly, I don't understand what the hype is about. It's not really any different than any other fleece I've ever owned. Every time I'm anywhere near Leadville on a trail like the CDT or Colorado Trail, I always get comments about, I bet he comes back with a Melanzana hoodie. Kevin, I'm gonna need your left bean, my friend. What is really silly about those things to me is the fact that they don't sell them online. You have to go to Leadville to buy one. Now you have to have an appointment to even get into the store to buy it, and people are buying them and then reselling them online anywhere from $100 to $200 for a simple, basically plastic fleece hoodie. So a Melanzana is one that I just don't understand. I've never really got that trend, that hype that everybody else tends to absolutely love. I would personally never buy a Melanzana hoodie. I think there are tons of other better fleeces or just as good fleeces out on the market that are easily available and not so damn expensive. Hey guys, Future Darwin cutting in here for a second. Even though this video is all about backpacking gear that I would never buy or I would ever buy again, there was one super essential piece of gear that I would definitely recommend and I would definitely buy if I was just getting into backpacking, and that is a good trip planning and navigation app like Onx Backcountry. I've been talking about Onx Backcountry in a bunch of my videos lately. Some of the awesome features that actually made me switch over from using hiking apps that I've used in the past. But there's one feature that I haven't talked a lot about that has become super invaluable to me, especially hiking here in the Southwest where I live, or out on the West Coast on sections of the PCT in California, Oregon, or Washington, and that is the active wildfire layer. It's summer hiking season, which unfortunately means it's also wildfire season. Wildfires have become a huge part of hiking and backpacking logistics, and what's really great about the active wildfire layer on Onx is whether I'm at home planning my trip or I'm out on the trail, I can toggle it on and I can see where wildfires have sprung up in my area. That way I can completely stay away from them and reroute around them and I can also check the air quality of how the smoke is going to be in the area that I'm in. So I'm making sure that I'm not camping in an area where it's super thick and I'm endangering my health. So if you want to step up your backpacking and hiking logistics game and you just want to be safer while you're out in the backcountry, check out my link down below to get 20% off of an Onx Backcountry subscription. And you can even sign up for a free trial before committing. Again, it's a great way to step up your logistics game and be safer out on trail and to help support my channel. All right, let's get back to the video. The next piece of gear that I would never buy again, because I have bought them in the past and used them on trail, is a JetBoil system, or really any of these integrated cook systems. So a system that comes with the pot and kind of the burner that attaches to it. I used a JetBoil when I first went out to start the Appalachian Trail in 2015, and probably about 200 miles in, I ended up sending it home and getting something much smaller. Now, this one does have an exception to it, and I'll talk about that here in a second. But for general backpacking, I just think JetBoil systems and things like with the MSR reactor and any of those combined cook systems are just total overkill. They're big and they're clunky and they're heavy and they're pretty damn expensive for the system. Now, the exception to that is if you are into like deep winter backpacking, or you're doing something like mountaineering and climbing where you're up on a portaledge and you need something to be super, super efficient on gas. If you're not doing any of that and you're just doing general backpacking or through hiking, these things are total overkill. I mean, honestly, we got rid of ours just because we were tired of hauling around all this clunky gear and got something much smaller. I think nowadays there are so many great canister stoves on the market, like the little BRS stove that I've been using for years, super cheap. I think these are still like $12 or $13 on Amazon, or something like the Soto Windmaster. All these stoves are much smaller, they're much cheaper, they pack down way smaller, and then using something like a regular titanium cookpot, whether it's something like a 750 cookpot or an 1100 cookpot, but this system is so much cheaper. I think if you put these two together, you're looking at about $40 or $50, where something like one of these JetBoil systems is $120. And again, for general fair weather backpacking, this is not gonna do anything different than what this is. So JetBoil systems from here on out, again, unless I'm gonna be doing some mountaineering or climbing, I would never spend my money on a JetBoil system for backpacking. All right, the next piece of gear that I wanna talk about is one that again is gonna ruffle a bunch of feathers, and it's because it's such a popular piece of backpacking gear, and that is the Nemo Tensor sleeping pads. I do not understand why people love these so much. I don't get the hype. Now, I'm somebody that has used a handful of different pads in the past. I used Big Agnes pads for a long time, and then I ended up switching to Thermarest sleeping pads, using things like the Thermarest Neo Air, which I used for years, the Uberlight, which is now discontinued, and the Xtherm. And I've always gotten great sleep on those pads. Well, over the last year, I decided I wanted to start trying out some new sleeping pads. I've been trying a bunch of different ones, and ones that are super popular, ones that a lot of my friends use. And the one that kept coming up were these Nemo Tensors. So first, I tried the Nemo Tensor Trail, the yellow one. I used that for about 3 months. I borrowed it from a friend, took it out on multiple trips, spent a good 6 nights on it, and got absolutely horrible sleep. Absolutely horrible. It was wide, it was long, so it was what I'm used to with my other pads, but it was just simply uncomfortable. I didn't get good sleep at all. The other thing that I really don't like about these pads is the valve. So it has a flat valve that's very much meant for a pump sack or one of these small electronic pumps, and where every once in a while I will take one of these, sometimes I don't. And I like to still blow up a pad with my mouth at the end of the day. These are an absolute nightmare to blow up with your lungs because it has kind of this flat valve. It doesn't have your kind of standard typical valve that sticks off the top of the pad. So I found that to be annoying. Well, I sent that pad back, and then I decided, you know what, I'll give it one more shake, and I borrowed one of these Tensor all-season pads from a friend. And again, absolutely uncomfortable. I don't get it. I honestly don't get it. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe somebody can tell me down in the comments why you think these pads are so comfortable. But for me, it just didn't work. The Nemo Tensor pads don't work. I don't understand the hype, and I would personally never buy one of these going forward. All right, next up is another super popular piece of backpacking accessory that I see a lot of backpackers use, and that is one of these hydration bladders for your backpack. I have never understood why people use these. I know people love their hydration bladders and their little hose where it's convenient to drink. So many people think that these are very convenient to use, but I can tell you that I have never found it inconvenient just to have my water bottle on my side pocket, grab it, take a drink, and put it back. To me, these things have always seemed like a hassle and super inconvenient. Anytime I've ever seen somebody fill one of these up on the trail, they gotta stop, open up their pack, fish this out, open it up, try to find a way to get it under the water source, get it back in there, get everything packed back up, run the hose back through. Super inconvenient. Plus, I don't want water sloshing around on my back as I'm going down the trail during the day. That would absolutely drive me nuts. And the fact that they hold a bunch of bacteria. So I know people get these really nasty and dirty all the time. You gotta keep them clean, you gotta keep the hose clean. If my water bottle gets bacteria or it gets gross in it, I just recycle the bottle and I get a new one. Very easy, very simple, and very cheap. And then when it comes down to water storage, I know a lot of people love these because they can store like 3 liters of water in their backpack. I just carry 1 or 2 of these 1 liter water bottles on my side pockets. And if I really need extra water storage, I just use a kind of small, compact, foldable water bladder like the Knox Vecto. So to me, these things have always been overkill. They've always been a waste of money. I would personally never ever buy a hydration bladder for my backpack. All right, and then the last piece of gear that I think is a total waste of money, and I bought one once, but I'll never buy one again, is a tent footprint. A footprint for your tent. So many tent companies sell these with their tents. This is actually one that I bought probably back in 2013 for my Big Agnes Copper Spur UL2. It was the tent that I used for the Appalachian Trail. We fell into the trap and we bought the footprint. And we used it here and there, but what's funny is we actually got rid of the tent and the person that we gave the tent to didn't want the footprint, which is why I still have it. Footprints are an absolute waste of money. My rule of thumb is if a floor to a tent is so delicate that I need an extra piece of fabric to put under it, it's not a good tent. Out of all of the miles that I've hiked, out of all the nights that I've camped in a tent over the last 9 years, I have never gotten a hole in the bottom of my tent. I have camped on tons of bad ground, on rocky ground, on ground that was just littered with little pine cone leaves, the little pokey ones, in the desert, in the fort, everywhere. And I've never gotten a hole in my tent because I simply pay attention to where I'm setting my tent down. I kick out rocks and debris to make sure I'm not gonna puncture the bottom of my tent, and I never have. So to me, whether it's one of these kind of pre-made footprints that tent companies will sell with their tents, or it's something like a piece of Polycro or a piece of Tyvek. So many people use a piece of Tyvek. I think it's an absolute waste of time and waste of money to spend and have in your pack and in your gear setup, because again, if your tent floor is that fragile, you probably shouldn't be using that tent in the backcountry. So tent footprints, an absolute waste of money that I will never buy again. All right, guys, there you go. There's all of my hot takes on popular backpacking gear that I see a lot of people take. What do you guys think? What do you think of my hot takes? What are some of your hot takes? What's some gear that you absolutely can't understand why people spend their money on it? Leave it down below and let me know your thoughts. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you're taking care of yourselves. I hope you're taking care of each other. I love you, and as always, thanks for watching.